Okay, so picture this. My sister just shows up and demands my freshly renovated master suite, right? And, of course, my parents side with her, calling me selfish as if paying the mortgage doesn't count for anything. I mean, seriously, at that moment, something just snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stripped the house bare, every single thing. And here's the weird part: they thought they'd won. But wait, that's just the beginning. You won't believe what happens next. I didn't think a Thursday could feel like the absolute end of everything. But wow, looking back, the cracks were already there before I even pulled into the driveway. I was running on fumes, seriously. 70 hours of work that week, finishing a fintech app launch that had been riddled with bugs and indecisive stakeholders. My eyes felt like sandpaper, and there was this constant thumping at the base of my skull, a migraine just waiting to happen if I didn't get into a dark room fast. All I wanted, really, was my sanctuary. My memory foam mattress, the gentle hum of the air purifier, maybe a quiet audiobook, and some peace, just a little peace. I parked my car, the only one in the driveway less than 10 years old. A modest sedan I'd bought 2 years ago. Stepping out, the humid air clung to me like it had its own agenda, making my skin crawl and sticking to my shirt. And then I saw it. Dad's truck, sitting there like it owned the place. Usually, Albert spent his Thursdays at the lodge, playing cards or tinkering with broken lawnmowers he never actually fixed. And then there was another car, bright yellow with a peeling bumper sticker that read, "Wild Child." Mia. My stomach did this slow flip. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be 3 hours away, living her best life with that DJ boyfriend, Kyle, the one I'd met once and who somehow tried to borrow $50 from me within 5 minutes. Fantastic. Just fantastic. I unlocked the front door, the heavy oak dragging along the frame, grating against the floor like nails on, well, something equally terrible. My shoulder protested, my head protested, my entire body protested. Usually, the house was quiet, a sanctuary during the day, perfect for working remotely and hiding from the chaos of life. But today, it felt different. Thick with tension, vibrating almost audibly with whispers that stopped the moment the latch clicked shut behind me. Then Mom's voice, cutting through the air. "Megan, is that you? Not warm, not familiar. Sharp, brittle, just off." "Yeah. Mom, it's me." I called back, dropping my laptop bag on the entryway bench. My shoulders screamed, my head throbbed, and all I could think was, I need a nap. A proper nap. Not this family drama. I pressed 2 fingers to my temples, the jagged lines in my peripheral vision practically spelling out Migraine City. I just wanted to sink into my sanctuary and disappear. But, of course, Carol appears from the living room, dish towel in hand, though I knew she hadn't been doing anything remotely productive. Her eyes darted around like she was trying to locate her own exit. "Come in here, please. We need to have a family meeting." My head nearly exploded. "Can it wait?" I muttered under my breath. "I see jagged lines. I need ibuprofen." Albert's voice boomed from the recliner, and just like that, I'm being dragged into their chaos, whether I like it or not. The living room looked like a tableau of judgment. Albert, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the carpet like it's the most important thing in the world. Carol, wringing the towel like she's trying to strangle it. And there, in the middle of the sofa, Mia, wrecked. Mascara smudged, nose red, clutching a box of tissues as if it were a lifeline, surrounded by 3 large suitcases, and me, standing there, migraine raging, dreading the conversation that was about to start. I asked, voice tight with fatigue, "What's going on?" Dread pooling in my stomach, nausea from the migraine mixing with something heavier, sharper. Carol's voice, trembling. Performative sympathy Mia is back. Kyle kicked her out. She has nowhere to go. My patience snapped somewhere between the 70-hour work week and the migraine. Breakups are brutal, fine. But the timing completely, devastatingly inconvenient. Mia just stared at me, lip quivering. And then Carol drops at the master suite. My room, the sanctuary I'd built, paid for, and meticulously arranged. My chest went cold. The audacity, the betrayal. The migraine flared sharper, a distinct piercing point behind my eye. But honestly, the emotional pain was worse. My sanctuary, my space, expected to be surrendered on demand. I stood there numb, ice coating my nerves, trying not to scream, not to throw something. And as I looked at them, the sister who mocked my career, the father who hadn't paid a bill in years, the mother who treated me like an ATM, I realized the true weight of it. This wasn't a request. It was an expectation that I didn't matter, and my exhaustion didn't make it any easier. I walked into the living room, migraine throbbing behind my eyes, and froze for a moment. Albert was in his recliner, arms crossed, staring at the carpet like he could will it into solving the problem. Carol stood by the mantel, wringing a dish towel as if she was trying to squeeze every ounce of tension out of it. And there, in the center of the sofa, sat Mia, mascara smeared, looking pitiful but also kind of like she knew she'd won. My stomach dropped. I forced myself to speak, my voice dry. "What's going on?" Carol's voice trembled, that fake sympathy I knew too well. "Mia is back. Kyle kicked her out. She has nowhere to go. Megan, she's heartbroken." I blinked. Heartbroken. Yeah. Okay, I understood breakups. I really did. But the timing? The fact that I had been working 70 hours straight, surviving on caffeine and sheer willpower, made this feel like a cruel joke. "I'm sorry, Mia," I said, meaning it, but my patience was already thin. That sucks, truly. But why is this a family meeting that couldn't wait until I took ibuprofen? Mia just stared at Carol, lower lip quivering, silent. Carol puffed out her chest, and suddenly, she was all steel beneath the act. Mia needs a safe space. She needs stability. She's going to be moving back in. I tried to reason, my migraine pounding harder. "Okay, we can set up the air mattress in the guest room until we clear out the boxes there." Albert grunted, finally looked up, his face set, hard. "The guest room is full of damp. The basement leaks. That's no place for a grieving girl." I exchanged a look with Carol, trying to process, and then she said it. Words I wasn't ready for. "She needs the master suite." Megan. My brain stalled. The master suite. My sanctuary. The room I'd spent $15,000 renovating, my migraine hit a peak, stabbing behind my eyes. "You mean my room?" I croaked. Carol rushed her explanation, almost defensive. "It's the only room with the ensuite bathroom. The space for her yoga things and her clothes. She needs privacy. She needs to feel like she has a home again. You can take the guest room, just for a little while. You're strong. Megan, you can handle some discomfort. Mia is fragile right now." "Fragile? Sure. But, my migraine and stomach were screaming louder than any sense of fairness. My mind raced. They were serious. They expected me to pack up, move out of the room I paid for, the room I lived in, the room I had carefully curated into my own sanctuary. I looked at Mia. She wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes were sharp, assessing, waiting to see if I would cave. "You want me?" I whispered, voice cracking slightly. I could barely believe the audacity. They expected me to give up my space without argument. To me, it wasn't just a room. It was proof of years of work, financial sacrifice, and honestly, surviving while they were just coasting. Carol's face twisted, snapping back into her performative fury. "It's just a room. Megan, why does it have to be about square footage? Your sister is in crisis, and you're worried about furniture." Selfish. Selfish. The word hit me like a slap. Selfish. Me. I looked at the three of them: my sister, who had mocked my career; my father, who hadn't paid a single bill in years; my mother, who treated me like an ATM. Selfish. My migraine flared to a distinct, piercing point behind my eye. But the emotional pain, that was worse. The betrayal wasn't just the request. It was the assumption that I'd comply. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. That was Mia's territory. Instead, cold numbness washed over me, a protective layer of ice coating my nerves. "I need to think," I said, my voice hollow, steady. Albert leaned back, shifting in the recliner, voice booming. "There's nothing to think about. Mia is already unpacking the car. You need to have your stuff out by Saturday." "Saturday?" I laughed, a short, dry, humorless sound. "Today is Thursday. You want me to pack up my entire life, my office, my workspace in 48 hours? And here's the weird part, they actually think that's reasonable." Mia piped up, voice scratchy but tinged with entitlement. "Just clothes and computers." I blinked. "I have furniture. I have a vanity. I have things that need space. My computers are my livelihood," I said, turning to her. "The livelihood that literally pays for the electricity they're using right now." "Don't throw money in her face," Carol shouted, slamming her hand on the mantel. "We are a family," she barked. "We help each other. You've been blessed." "Megan, you make all this money sitting in your pajamas, tapping on a keyboard while the rest of us struggle. It's time you gave something back." I stared at her. Gave something back. I walked out of the living room, legs like lead, my head splitting. I could hear them whispering behind me. "She's always been like this," Mia whined. "So possessive," Carol cooed, reassuring her. "Don't worry, honey. She'll do it. She knows it's the right thing to do." I reached the top of the landing and opened my door. My room. My sanctuary. 3 years ago, I had saved the house from foreclosure, taken over the mortgage, fixed the utilities, the taxes, even upgraded appliances that were fire hazards. This was mine. Every inch. The walls, the floors, the lighting, the desk, the rain shower, the heated bathroom floors. I built it. I paid for it, and they expected to walk in and just take it. My migraine had sharpened into something acute, but now it was paired with fury, betrayal. The audacity of their entitlement was almost surreal. I walked over to my desk, dual monitors glaring back at me, ergonomic chair exactly where I liked it. My server rack blinked quietly in the corner, humming life into the house's digital infrastructure. They saw walls, floors, furniture. They didn't see the network, the Wi-Fi, the thermostat. the entire functionality of their lives that ran on things I had installed. Then, Carol came in, not knocking, just barging in like she owned the place. Her eyes scanned the room, calculating, ignoring my years of work. "Mia is going to need this chair," she said, running a hand over my $800 velvet armchair. "It matches her aesthetic. You won't fit it in the guest room anyway." I blinked. My head was pounding, but the cold clarity in my mind was rising. "Mom," I said flatly. "Oh, stop it," she waved dismissively. "It's just stuff. Family matters more than stuff. We thought it'd be fair if you keep paying the mortgage. Obviously. But maybe we can lower your grocery contribution by $50 a month to make up for the inconvenience." $50, I repeated it in my head. My eyes narrowed. My migraine throbbed. The nerve. She turned to leave, but paused. "Oh, and move the router thingy out of here. Mia says the lights keep her awake. Put it in the hall." I stared at her, stunned. The level of entitlement was astronomical. They thought they had won. They assumed my compliance. They weren't looking at the infrastructure. They weren't seeing the actual leverage I had. And that's when the cold, calculating part of me clicked on. They had made a critical error. They were looking at walls, floors, furniture. They weren't looking at what made the house run. The technology, the infrastructure, the systems that I had built, owned, and controlled. They forgot one crucial detail. I didn't just pay for the space. I owned the functionality of their lives, too. And they had no idea what was coming next. Sitting there, I couldn't help but think back over the years, the quiet, invisible ledger I'd been keeping. I mean, I'd taken over the mortgage when the house was about to go into foreclosure, covered the utilities, the taxes, all the bills they never seemed to notice or care to pay. I had done it because, well, I thought it was the responsible thing to do. I was 23, making 6 figures, living in a tiny city apartment, and I moved back to save them. I figured if I just worked hard enough, if I kept proving myself, maybe, just maybe, they'd see me not as the bank, not as the unpaid labor, but as their daughter. And then there was Mia, always polished, always loud, the golden child. While she was getting her cheerleading uniforms that cost more than some of my first apartments, I was juggling part-time jobs, saving for college. When she wrecked her first car, a tiny fender bender really, Albert took out a loan to replace it immediately so her confidence wouldn't take a hit. Me, I got a flat tire in college and was told, figure it out, money's tight, and I did. I internalized it, thinking, okay, one day they'll notice, one day all this effort will count for something, but now, sitting here, migraine throbbing behind my eyes, I realized it hadn't counted. Not the way I thought it would. Carol, that woman, she's a master, a real architect of manipulation. I can't even count the number of times she twisted a compliment into an insult so I'd apologize for existing. Beauty queen once, now manipulating from the shadows, always positioning herself so that Mia became this extension of her own vanity. And me, I was the utility child, the one who was reliable, quiet, low maintenance, the one who would pay the bills and fix the problems while they coasted through life. I see it now so clearly. I see the pattern, the favoring, the entitlement all laid out in front of me like some cruel schematic. I remember walking into the kitchen a few evenings ago and seeing them planning. Mia leaning against the granite island I paid for. pepperoni dripping from her slice, talking about curtains and vanities, Carol pouring wine, agreeing, reinforcing the plan to take my things. They weren't even subtle. My blood ran cold, just standing there, observing. And here's the thing: I had spent years providing the foundation for their comfort, the very space they now thought they owned. Every appliance, every fixture, every smart device, every inch of hardwood I paid for, they saw it as theirs. My labor, my money, my attention, all invisible, taken for granted. And it hit me painfully that this wasn't just about money. It was about power, control. They had been slowly conditioning me, teaching me that my efforts were just expected, that my work could be harvested like some endless resource. Meanwhile, the contrast between my life and Mia's couldn't have been sharper. I had worked nights, weekends, 70-hour weeks, just to maintain this fragile balance of sanity and obligation. And she had been living the pampered life of the favorite child, oblivious to the stakes, untouched by consequence. I realized I had been subsidizing not just their comfort, but their entitlement. Every time I bailed them out, every time I filled in the gaps, I was teaching them that they could take without consequence. And apparently, they were excellent students. I leaned back, the migraine flaring, but my mind clearing. I could see it all now: the pattern, the leverage, the way Carol orchestrated everything from behind the scenes, and how Albert just floated along, complicit in his passivity. And I felt this strange mix of anger and clarity, this cold focus cutting through the fog of frustration and pain. The realization settled in. I needed to reclaim control, not just over my things, but over my life. It wasn't just about asserting ownership over a room, or furniture, or devices. It was about reclaiming the autonomy I had given away, piece by piece, over years. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt my determination solidify. I wouldn't rush. I wouldn't react impulsively, but I knew what needed to happen. The soft, accommodating version of me, the one that had bent and folded under the weight of obligation and guilt for years, had to step aside. There was a new calculation forming behind my eyes, cold and precise. I was done being the utility child, done being invisible, done being the wallet. It was time to flip the script, to take back not just what was mine, but the narrative itself. And honestly, it felt liberating, really liberating. I spent the next afternoon deep in planning mode, and honestly, I felt a kind of focus I hadn't had in months. I pulled out every receipt I could find from the past 3 years, lining them up across the desk like I was mapping a battlefield. Washer and dryer, $1,800, refrigerator, $2,200, electrical work, plumbing, flooring, all of it meticulously recorded. My eyes flicked from screen to paper, making sure I had highlighted every single transaction that could prove, well, ownership. Not because I was trying to punish anyone yet, but because knowledge is power, and I needed all the leverage I could get. Next came the labeling. I grabbed neon green post-it notes and started methodically tagging everything that was unequivocally mine. Server rack mine, smart TV mine, heated towel rack mine. I walked slowly around the space, whispering under my breath, just to reinforce it in my mind. Megan's property, Megan's property. It felt almost ritualistic, calming in a weird way, Like I was planting the seeds of what was coming without actually planting anything destructive. My migraine throbbed faintly behind my eyes, but oddly, the clarity of the work helped push it to the background. Then there was the movers. I called Elite Moving Services, spelled everything out in painstaking detail. 3 men, large truck, Sunday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. I explained that the crew needed to follow my instructions only. And if anyone tried to intervene, they should ignore them. I didn't bother explaining why, because the plan had to stay airtight. Mike, the foreman, understood immediately, smiling like he knew he was about to play a part in some top-secret operation. Perfect. The trap was set. I could almost feel the tension crackling in the house, even though, at this point, my family had no idea what was brewing. Back inside, the house was buzzing with the kind of oblivious energy only entitlement can create. Mia was leaning against the stair railing, sipping wine, flipping through paint swatches. "Pink chiffon or rose petal?" she asked, smiling at me like we were casually discussing interior design. "Rose petal," I said, stepping around her without missing a beat. The audacity of their assumptions was almost laughable. They were so confident, so sure that my compliance was a given. And I let them think that for a little while, because the more they assumed, the more vulnerable they made themselves. Carol, of course, floated nearby, offering her unsolicited guidance. "We'll ask her at dinner," she said, glancing toward me. "She's been grumpy, so let's butter her up first." I just nodded, sipping my coffee, keeping the mask of compliance on. They had no clue that every word they spoke, every move they made, was being mentally logged and countered in my mind. They were planning the layout of a room I had paid for, discussing rugs and curtains, while I was planning the extraction of my entire investment. The cognitive dissonance made me smirk. Well, if ignorance is bliss, they were about to be very blissful. Very briefly, I checked the kitchen junk drawer for packing tape, the one full of bills, rubber bands, and random dead batteries. Sure enough, buried under a pile of takeout menus, there it was. And then, jackpot. I snagged a slender envelope. It was a bank statement from a credit union 2 towns over, addressed to Carol and Albert. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling my heart hammer. They had been hoarding money while I carried everything. $44,500. Sitting there for 3 years. My stomach turned, a mix of disbelief and cold fury. They had watched me sacrifice, skip vacations, drive an old car, pay the bills, and not once had they mentioned it. And now, they were planning to take my sanctuary from me. This, I realized, was the kind of betrayal that sharpens the mind, focused, precise, ruthless. I shoved the statement into my pocket and waited until Carol stepped out, fanning herself and muttering something about the heat. She never suspected a thing. That, I realized, was the beauty of it. I could operate right under their noses. When Mia asked about my noise-canceling headphones, suggesting I leave them for her meditation, I forced a tight lid on the rage. That was their first test. Small and petty, and I passed it. Strategic patience was the name of the game. Exploding now would only ruin everything I'd meticulously planned. I needed to execute, and that meant discipline. Back upstairs, I turned to the room itself. I didn't start with clothes. No, I started with the infrastructure, the things that made my space functional and valuable. Router, smart thermostat, expensive Philips Hue bulbs, shower head, bidet attachment, even the toilet paper holder. Every item tagged, every item carefully removed or planned for extraction. I visualized each step, imagined the crew moving methodically, each green sticky note serving as an unspoken command. This was my territory, my rules. Mia knocked around 10, leaning against the doorframe. She tried to guilt me about the TV, and I let her talk, calmly, even whispered, "It's mine." And in that moment, I owned the truth. I was the wallet, if they wanted to see it that way. But more than that, I was the strategist. I opened apps, scheduled disconnections for power, internet, water, and gas. Sunday noon, everything would flip. The house would be a shell, and they wouldn't see it coming. And yet, I kept a calm exterior, no snide remarks, no drama. Let them think I was compliant. Let them underestimate me. It made the impending operation that much sweeter. As I walked the rooms, visualizing Sunday morning, I felt an empowering clarity. Years of quiet sacrifice had built me the skills to orchestrate this perfectly. Meticulous, methodical, and patient, I had turned the tables without firing a single emotional shot yet. The migraine had dulled, replaced with a steely focus. Every detail mattered: receipts, sticky notes, movers, digital proof, precise schedules. The house buzzed with the oblivious life of my family, completely unaware that every move, every word, every assumption was accounted for in my plan. And as night fell, I leaned back, looking at the neat rows of documents and labeled items. It wasn't just about moving things. It was about reclaiming control, teaching the ungrateful the value of my work, and doing it all with precision. I smiled quietly to myself. They thought they had me trapped with obligation and guilt. They didn't even know the game had already started. The stage was set. All that remained was the execution, and I was ready. Sunday morning hit like a quiet before the storm. The sky was this heavy, bruised purple, threatening rain, and honestly, it kind of mirrored what I was about to do. I woke up at 6, already dressed in workout clothes, walking through the house. One last time, checking labels, sticky notes, making sure everything was organized for the movers. The air was still, thick with humidity, and the calm almost fooled you into thinking nothing big was happening. But oh, something huge was coming. I could feel it. At 7:45, I went downstairs, unlocked the front door, and propped it open with a heavy stone. Every little detail mattered. I wanted this to go off without a hitch. Surgical precision, no mistakes. And then, at exactly 8, a rumble tore through the silence, a diesel engine, the hissing of air brakes, announcing arrival. My movers had arrived, 4 men in work boots, clipboards in hand, ready to follow my exact instructions. I met Mike, the foreman, outside. He was a big guy, arms like tree trunks, clipboard in hand, and this grin like he already knew the chaos was coming. "Megan," he asked. I nodded. "That's me," I said, handed him the floor plan I had drawn, with every item highlighted. "Everything in yellow goes, green sticker mine. Anyone tries to stop you who isn't me, ignore them." The men grinned. They knew exactly what kind of day this was going to be. I stepped back and watched them march in, boots clomping against the hardwood, and I felt this strange thrill finally, some control. From the staircase, I could hear Carol shriek, "Megan, who are these people?" Her silk robe swished, hair in rollers, face frozen in panic and disbelief. "These are the movers." "Mom," I called out, calm, letting my voice carry. "I told you, help for the guest room." That barely registered. She shouted again. "Why are they in the living room? Why are they touching the TV?" Still calm, still steady. I ignored the hysteria. Albert appeared in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes, confusion written all over him. He froze when he saw the men lifting his prized leather recliner. "Hey, put that down. That's my chair," he barked, his voice cracked between shock and fury. I stepped between him and the movers. "Dad," I said, voice steady, almost conversational. "I bought that chair December 14th, 2023. I have the receipt. It's mine. It's going with me. You can't stop this." Mia's scream cut through from the landing. "They're unplugging the fridge." "Mom." Carol's face went white. "Megan, stop this, the food will spoil." I looked at her, calmly, as if it were just another mundane household decision. "Get coolers, or eat it fast. Your choice," I said, letting the words hang. They didn't understand the calm. It made the panic worse. The movers moved methodically. Washer, dryer, carefully disconnected and wrapped. TVs, monitors, desk, everything dismantled, tagged, moved to the truck with precision. My Dyson, Ninja blender, Lacrosette pot set all gone. Every item accounted for, every step planned. I stayed cool, giving short, precise instructions. "Careful with that bracket. Don't scratch the floors. Everything green is mine. Ignore complaints." My voice, calm and unwavering, seemed to terrify them more than yelling ever could. Albert hovered like a cat, unsure whether to jump. He tried to argue about the refinished floors. I cut him off, calm, deliberate. The floor. Part of the house, not moving. Everything else tagged, moved, done. Carol tried to step in, block the path to the dining area where my TV had been mounted. Mike politely asked her to step aside. She froze, speechless. I just nodded, letting the operation continue. My heart hammering in quiet satisfaction. Mia's eyes widened, jaw dropped. "Wait, you hired movers for this," she spat, incredulous. I shrugged, calm, sipping my coffee. "I want it done quickly. Don't drag this out." "You can be surprised or calm. Your choice." Her shock was a little too delicious. The first heavy appliances disappeared through the door, and reality began to sink in. Hours passed with an almost ritualistic rhythm. The washer and dryer left the laundry room, gaping and dusty. Microwave boxed, TV carefully disconnected. My L-shaped mahogany desk dismantled. Monitors wrapped, server rack removed methodically. Each movement precise. Downstairs, the family's disbelief became outright outrage. Carol shrieked, flailed, demanded explanations, shrieked about manners, about family, but nothing changed. I nodded calmly, issuing instructions as needed, voice clipped, authoritative, steady. Their hysteria didn't matter. By mid-morning, the house echoed hollowly. My hard work, my labor, everything I had poured into this place, leaving in neat, labeled boxes. Only the old stained furniture and garage storage remained. Albert and Carol wandered, faces pale, trying to process that their assumptions of entitlement were collapsing in real time. Their authority, the family hierarchy, all crumbling like brittle paper. Mia stormed through, arms flailing. "I have friends coming. What am I supposed to tell them?" I leaned casually against the wall, watching. "Tell them whatever you want. I don't care. You need a villain. Fine. I admit my calm made her panic worse. Carol collapsed onto the sofa, crying, tears streaming. How can you leave us like this? We have nothing. No money to replace this. I shook my head. You have $44,500 in the credit union, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear. I slapped the paper against the wall where the TV had been. Silence. Carol froze. Albert's face turned, disbelief written on every line. What? He whispered. I let it sink in. While I paid the mortgage, covered bills, kept this house running, you hoarded money, 44 grand, accruing interest, and you had the nerve to call me selfish. Mia moved closer, reading the statement. Awe, horror. Carol stammered. Excuses about emergencies and retirement. I cut through calmly, decisively. I was your retirement plan, apparently, and I quit, effective immediately. Goodbye. The final moments approached. 11:59, I walked to the porch, the movers closing the back of the truck. At exactly noon, the house went dark. Lights flickered out. The fridge hummed, ceased. Wi-Fi vanished. Power gone. Mia shrieked. Carol's face drained of color. Albert staggered. I got into my car, engine purring, didn't look back. I only saw the open road ahead. The first real breath of relief in years. Everything meticulous, deliberate, every plan executed perfectly. The chaos inside was complete, and outside, my world felt wide, bright, and entirely under control. I needed tape, just a small thing. Right. But as I rifled through the junk drawer in the kitchen, the one where bills, batteries, and random cords go to die, I felt this flicker of something. My hand snagged a long, slender envelope buried under a pile of takeout menus. I pulled it out, curious. It wasn't tape at all. It was a bank statement. And not just any statement. The return address said Carol and Albert Miller. I froze for a second, my heart hammering. I knew our finances. I managed them. This didn't match the story they'd been telling me for years. 0 savings, tight budget. Living paycheck to paycheck, they'd painted this picture for a reason. And here it was, staring me in the face. I ripped open the envelope, hands trembling. Inside, a quarterly statement from a credit union 2 towns over. I scanned the numbers. Beginning balance $42,500. Deposit casino winnings $2,000. Ending balance $44,500. My breath caught. 44 grand. Sitting there, untouched, accruing interest. For 3 years, while I was working 70-hour weeks, paying the mortgage, covering utilities, filling the fridge, fixing broken appliances, watching me skip vacations, drive an old car, literally stretching every dollar while they faked scarcity. And all this while they called me selfish. I could feel my stomach drop and my head buzz. But this wasn't just shock, it was validation. Every long night, every sacrifice suddenly framed in context. I hadn't been the problem. I had been the only thing keeping the house afloat. The air left my lungs. I shoved the statement into my pocket, the paper stiff and crisp. I needed a moment, a plan. Panic would ruin everything. Timing, precision that was my ally. I took a breath, let the cold, methodical clarity wash over me. This was it, the leverage I needed, the evidence to finally shift the balance, to execute what I had been planning all along. Then I heard movement behind me. Carol. fanning herself, had returned, probably checking the patio for early morning sunlight, or maybe thinking she could sense the shift before it even happened. She stopped when she saw me holding the envelope. Her eyes flicked briefly to the corner of my pocket, then back to the soda she'd grabbed from the fridge. "Did you find the tape?" she asked casually, voice airy, like she hadn't been in a full-blown panic for the past 3 hours. But I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't see my mother. I saw a stranger, the practiced lines around her eyes, the expertly dyed hair, the little twist of her mouth she used to manipulate, all of it suddenly exposed in daylight. "Yeah," I said, voice hollow, distant. "I found it." I didn't move, didn't offer her the statement. Her shoulders tensed, her eyes narrowed slightly, just enough to show curiosity, just enough to show unease. "Good," she said, popping the soda into her mouth as if everything was normal. But of course, it wasn't. I could feel the tension thickening, a tangible, almost visible wave vibrating through the kitchen. She started, in that infuriatingly sweet, syrupy tone. "Oh, by the way, Mia was wondering if you could leave your noise-canceling headphones for her meditation. You know, she thinks it'll help her," and I cut her off with a calm, clip, but heavy tone. "I'll think about it," I said. No elaboration, no warmth, just a promise that I would execute my plan with precision. Nothing left to chance. She smiled, patted my cheek, a mock gesture of warmth. "You're a good sister, even if you are a bit difficult sometimes." It was meant to be disarming. It failed. I waited until she moved away, glancing back at the patio. Then I pulled the statement from my pocket. The paper was crisp between my fingers, but my hands were steady now. I held it up, glanced at the numbers one last time, confirming the balance, $44,500. Then I snapped a picture with my phone, making sure the timestamp would serve as undeniable evidence. I uploaded it immediately to my cloud storage, a digital fortress that couldn't be challenged or gaslit away. One more step, and I was ready. The evidence existed, and it was untouchable. Now, I could go upstairs and start the methodical extraction. But I wasn't just moving clothes and personal items. I was reclaiming control. I packed the router first, replacing it with a cheap plastic one from the guest room. Every light bulb, every smart device, the expensive Philips Hue bulbs, replaced with standard ones I had kept boxed away. I went through the bathroom, meticulously showerhead, bidet attachment, toilet paper holder, all packed, all documented. Each move calculated, each replacement ensuring the system could no longer be exploited without my consent. By 10 peeps, Mia knocked, leaning against the doorframe, her tone smug. "Mom said you're taking the TV. That's really lame. Megan." I didn't flinch. Calmly, I said, "It's mine." "Mia, you're jealous." She twisted her face, trying to spit venom. "You're jealous because Mom and Dad actually like me. You think because you buy things, you own people, but you don't. You're just the wallet." I let her words sink, and then I whispered to the empty room, almost to myself. "You're right. I am the wallet." It was a confession, a mantra, and a declaration all in one. Then I opened my phone, navigated the utility app's power, internet, water, gas, and scheduled all disconnections for Sunday at noon. I wasn't just leaving. I was executing the plan, closing the accounts, shutting the system down, ensuring that the infrastructure my family had taken for granted would no longer exist without my explicit cooperation. The house, their comfort, their illusions, it was all about to be dismantled. And I was in full control. I leaned back, breathing in the quiet of the late evening. The tension coiled tightly around me. The moment had arrived. Tomorrow, everything would change. The evidence was secured, my strategy flawless, and the power balance finally tilted in my favor. The first week in my new apartment was, honestly, the quietest I'd experienced in years. I woke up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't hear the low hum of tension or the passive-aggressive commentary bouncing off the walls. Just sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and this weird, peaceful kind of clarity. I made coffee in my kitchen, poured it into a mug, and just sat on the balcony, breathing deep, full breaths, like I'd been holding them for a decade. It was weirdly liberating. No deadlines for my family, no guilt, no manipulations. For the first time, I realized the crushing weight I'd been carrying wasn't the stress from work. It was the gravity of their expectations. The constant, invisible pull of having to be everything for everyone. And now, it was gone. All of it. Just silence. And me. And the city stretching out below. I'd blocked their numbers on Sunday night. Hundreds of them. Carol, Mia, even distant aunts and uncles I hadn't talked to in years. I imagined they were already mobilizing, trying to guilt-trip me, recruit flying monkeys, orchestrate some sort of family intervention. I didn't care. I didn't need to hear their voices. Didn't need to justify myself. Didn't need to explain. I knew the script. I knew how it would go: anger, bargaining, guilt, rage, tears. I didn't answer the voicemails, didn't even listen to them. For once, silence was golden. Real silence, the kind that lets you breathe and finally see things clearly. I spent hours just walking around my apartment, letting the light hit every corner, opening drawers, touching the counters. Everything felt mine, not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually. I could choose exactly how I wanted to live, how I wanted the spaces to feel. I could sit, or lie, or work, or just stare out the window at the skyline without feeling like someone's eyes were always on me, judging me, expecting me to conform to their world. And then, 2 months later, the phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said, my voice still rough from disuse in real conversation, more used to screens and digital interfaces. It was Albert, my father. I froze, finger hovering over the hang-up button, instinctively. I thought he was calling for money or to guilt me back, or worse. But there was something different in his tone, clearer, quieter, almost hesitant, but honest. Not the usual gruff, passive voice from the recliner. "Dad," I said, voice stiff, wary. "If you're calling to ask for money, I'm hanging up." "I'm not," he said quickly. Relief and something heavier, maybe shame, bled through. "I just wanted to tell you that you were right." I paused, blinked, and let the words hang. Right about what I asked. Cautious. He sighed, a long, heavy sound. "About everything," he said. "About the money, about Carol, about how things really were." He explained what had happened after I left. Apparently, the emergency fund Carol had hoarded hadn't lasted long at all. Mia, furious with the lack of internet, The constraints of reality demanded that Carol buy new furniture immediately. They spent $15,000 in the first week, desperately trying to recreate the lifestyle I had provided. But it was a house built on someone else's labor and without my income. The reality of the bills hit them. The mortgage, utilities, taxes, everything had exploded. And for the first time, my family felt the pressure they had always ignored, or worse, expected me to absorb silently. He went on, his voice almost breaking at parts. Mia, realizing the free ride was over, had moved back in with Kyle, her boyfriend, just to escape the chaos at home. Carol blamed me, of course, but he had finally seen the truth. The statement I'd placed on the wall, the evidence of their hoarded money, had opened his eyes. "I let her use you," he said quietly, almost whispering. "I sat there and watched her bleed you dry because it was easier for me. I was a coward. I listened." I could hear the raw release in his voice, not sadness exactly, but relief, acknowledgement, and shame. I had expected anger, maybe resentment, but instead there was this validation, an acknowledgement that I hadn't been the villain in the story of my own life. I felt something shift inside me, a strange, light flutter of satisfaction, but tempered by a quiet reflection. I hadn't done it to prove a point or to punish. I'd done it to reclaim my life. And now, finally, I was living it. I didn't interrupt him. I just listened, letting the words fill the space I'd carved out for myself, letting them confirm the truth I had always known. He continued, softly, almost shyly. "I moved out at Megan, your mother. She's not handling it well, blames you every day, but I filed for separation. I can't live there anymore. It's too dark. And not just the lights." I swallowed, letting the moment land. And I said, finally, quietly but with warmth I hadn't used in years, "I'm glad, Dad. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm glad." His voice cracked, fragile but genuine. "I hope one day we can grab coffee. I want to pay for it with my own money." And I said, "Give it some time, but I'd like that." I could hear him exhale, and for a second, it felt like breathing in a space that had always been mine, finally unencumbered. I hung up, and I just sat there, looking out the window. The city hummed below, crisp autumn air rolling past, carrying the scent of change, justice. I realized it wasn't about seeing Carol suffer, though I knew she was currently in a house she couldn't afford, surrounded by the echoes of her own greed. Justice wasn't about Mia repeating her bad cycles, or Albert waking up, though some of that had happened. Justice was about me, reclaiming my life, setting boundaries, and finally feeling the freedom that had been denied to me for so long. I packed my laptop, moved a few things into their new places, and stepped out into the city. The air was crisp, signaling the start of autumn. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool, clean air of independence. I had lost a house, yes, but I had gained a life, and for the first time, it felt like the ledger was finally balanced. I smiled, a little imperfect, a little tired, but fully present, fully free, and fully myself. Looking back, it's wild, right? How much I carried for my family, how much I gave, and how blind I was to what really mattered. Moving out, setting boundaries, claiming my space. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about finally standing up for myself, realizing my value, and creating a life on my own terms. Makes you wonder, How often do we let others define what we deserve? Where's the line between loyalty and losing yourself?